So, hi everyone, welcome to this session of the answers to some of the questions that were submitted on the Google form for our very first episode of Keeping It Real. The topic was toxic relationships. And first of all, I'm very happy to hear such positive feedback. And what makes Aarti and me really, really happy is that people were able to relate to it. Right? It's not a question of just complimenting us on good content, but saying that, hey, that makes sense to me. And that is something that we really wanted to try. And so we also put in the Google form, we had some questions there, but Aarti wants to say something about those questions first. So Aarti.
So thank you, Anu, and thank you all for the feedback, for letting us know that you watched it again and again, and that each time you saw it, you found amazing insight into your life. I'm so glad that you did that. But at the same time, I'd like to start today's session with a disclaimer. Many of you who sent emails back to us let us know that you have a diagnosis of a particular mental health condition, and that you're on treatment or under treatment, and that you wanted to know if we could guide you. Please understand, this is not a session where we're giving out medical advice at all. As you know, we're calling it Keeping It Real. We're just bringing people's awareness towards conditions or situations that may be difficult for them to handle. So any question that came to us saying that you have a particular diagnosis and that you're under treatment, I would urge you to please continue working with your therapist, with your doctor, because they have worked with you, knowing you, understanding you, seeing certain signs and symptoms, and guiding you in the best possible way that they knew at that point, looking at your condition. We are not here to override any of those. We want you to understand that there are professionals who are trained for this, who know what to do, and who are already working with you. And therapy is something that takes time. So if you just think that you can keep looking at videos online and then do some self-treatment and things like that, I don't think I would suggest it as a professional and even as a friend. So please continue working with your mental health professional who knows your condition. And Anu, I think you also wanted to add something to the disclaimer.
Yeah. So this is it's a very common sense kind of thing. So what I wanted to do is tell people that what we are going to do is answer questions. But if you're looking for a quick fix, like someone to come from outside and say, here it is, magic pill, silver bullet, problem solved, not going to happen. Because most of the things involve a journey inwards and looking at yourself, your patterns, what do you need to change. So for me, whatever I've worked on has been a lot of effort put on myself looking inward rather than looking outward for solutions. So I'm hoping that what Aarti says as a professional and what I give an answer as a fellow traveler are all triggers that make you look inwards to help you become the best version of yourself. That's what I would like to say.
And I'd probably add to that, Anu, because I think somewhere people resonated with this whole Keeping It Real episode, because we were laughing at our own patterns. And, we're probably laughing at it now, but when the heart was broken at the end of many of our toxic patterns, it was a very, very deep journey inwards. And it was not easy. We're probably laughing about it now, but at that point, it was one of the most painful things that we had to sort of overcome or work through. So I know that it may be difficult for many of you, but I always say the destination may not be reached overnight, but the direction can change overnight. So what we'd like to do as two friends supporting you through this is to sort of show you a possible direction that you can choose to take starting today. And I hope that helps. So probably Anu will kickstart the whole thing.
Yeah. So as always, my favorite Excel sheets have been used. We've got the questions. So let's just dive straight into it. Aarti, you want to take the first one?
Yeah, so I'm going to club a couple of questions because they were very similar in content. In terms of, are there any signs and symptoms of toxic relationships? How do I identify that I'm in a toxic relationship? And apart from that, would toxic relationships make me overthink? Will they make me forgetful? Things like that. This is the first note of caution that I'm giving you. Remember, when we started the show, we told you we're not looking at it from the diagnostic angle, from a diagnostic umbrella, but more from a awareness perspective. So when I told you about toxic relationships, I told you we're not talking about diagnosis. We're not talking about something like depression, or we're not talking about an established diagnostic condition. We're talking about a pattern that I may have, in which case there are no signs and symptoms. What I would urge you to do, when you are in a relationship and you're feeling uncomfortable, examine a couple of things. One, are you getting stuck in the same place again? So I start off something in a relationship and invariably get stuck in the same place. Second, am I feeling uncomfortable? Do I feel drained and upset in the relationship? Do I feel I'm not being heard? Do I feel that my contributions are not being valued? Do I feel that the people around me are taking me for granted? Right? Now, these would be the simplest signs that I would take. But what would be slightly more difficult things to deal with? Am I always obsessively thinking about this relationship and how it's affecting me negatively? Is it a relationship that's limited me? I used to be able to do so much more. I'm doing so much, much less right now. Is that something that's happening? Now, if these are all things that are happening in your life right now, take a step back and look at the whole situation. Look at the whole situation, and I'm emphasizing that. Don't take one incident that happened on Tuesday night and then decide that it's an entire toxic pattern. I would ask you to look at how long this has been happening. And when you communicated, was there an apology? Was there a change in behavior? Then it's not toxic. But you did communicate, but it escalated the problem, or it didn't change. Then I would ask you to look at the toxic pattern. So I hope this sort of answers and clarifies several people's doubts on that one. And Anu, maybe the next question you probably have to take.
Yeah. So the next question is actually someone saying that they are working in, they're volunteering and helping children from helping teach children from an underprivileged section. But they feel that the focus has changed. And this person has had a discussion with the person running it, but there seems to be a difference in values. It's become sour. And the person who's in the organization feels, I don't want to leave it because I feel that, a resource cannot be found easily to replace me. What do I do? So I look at it from a very practical point of view. A lot of times in my life, I've always looked at everything almost like a balance. Okay. On one side, I've got one thing. On the other side, I've got one thing, which is more difficult for me to deal with as a price that I have to pay. So if my values are in such dissonance with the people who are running this organization, the deep sense of unhappiness and definitely a fear that my values are getting eroded because I'm trying to fit into this organization is too high a price for me to pay, right? This is for me. So if it is too high a price for me to pay, then I would say, forget it. Even if they are going to find it difficult to replace me with another resource, I will not be in this situation. But if it is not such a big battle, and it is all the small things like he didn't buy me a pen and I wanted a gift for New Year's and that hasn't happened, or something something that can be overlooked, or it is a small kind of a compromise that I'm willing to make. And for that sake, if I'm going to give up my position there as a volunteer who's bringing in so much benefit to the children, then I would say swallow your angst and everything about these small things. Stay in there and make that difference. That's what I would say.
What a beautiful way to answer that. Such a lovely answer. And I think the next one, the three of us will, three questions that we're putting it together, and we are answering it together. So the questions, the umbrella of questions was, how do I let go? I've already ended the relationship and I'm not able to forget the person. I'm always thinking about the person. How do I let go? The second one is about how to build trust. So while you're in a toxic relationship, how do you build trust? And when you've ended a relationship, how do you trust the next person who comes into your life? And the third is about forgiveness. Once I've let go, or I've sort of sorted out the differences, I'm still holding on to few things which I'm not able to forgive. So what do? So very tricky set of questions, because it's very easy for us to sit and say, oh no, you must forgive. Forgiveness is the beginning of the healing journey, etc., etc. People who have genuinely forgiven know how difficult it is as a process, because it's not a one-time thing. It's about something that you believed to be real that no longer resonates with who you are. And so when you are a completely new person now and you're looking back on events, it's not very easy. It's very easy for us to just say, you should just forget it. The future is calling, the past is over, and all of these motivational quotes that come up and pop up on social media. Believe me, they're amazing quotes. But in real life, it's not half as easy, because you've invested a part of yourself. And by that I'm saying an emotional part of yourself, a whole part of your dreams, wishes, ambitions, everything went into the relationship. It was not just a small aspect of you. As a result, what really needs to be done here, and if you ask me technically, there is a beautiful resource which I call Conscious Uncoupling. It's a beautiful book. You should be able to find it online. If you can read it and go through it, it has lovely steps that you can follow. Because uncoupling, though she talks about it from the intimate partner relationship, it can be used in friendships and business deals and everything. I've personally used Conscious Uncoupling to help me heal through certain relationships. That's a very beautiful book, because what it does is it helps you become aware of parts of yourself that were resonating with the toxicity, and helps you understand how to let go of that, and to also not bring that pattern back into the next relationship that you will attract into your life. And that's probably where I would also say bringing back trust is a process. It's not a set of 5 steps. Do this first, do this next, do this third. It doesn't work that way. When you are ready, you will know. And I don't want to sound like a mistake, but I want you to know when you're ready, you will know.
No, I love it, because see, not only is it insightful, it also kind of reminds us that a lot of the times we are fooled by what we read, and we assume that, oh, it is as simple as those 4 lines. But actually, those 4 lines, like you said, they are things that steer you in a direction. The journey is still there. That is your signpost. Your journey is what you do. Right? I would like to just add one thing to what you said, which is, and this is a mistake that I've done and which I have learned not to do, is because I've had relationships go wrong, I try to remove the glasses that I used with those relationships to look at those relationships, and try and look at this relationship with fresh glasses. Right? So that I'm not allowing myself to say, oh, there also it happened, this also is happening, there also is happening, this, so which might be doing this new relationship a disservice. Having said that, I also believe that we have to be conscious, if there also I did this, here also I'm doing this. So it is a kind of a balance that we need to do. Then about the question about trust, and what were the trust, truth and understanding. Right? So one of the statements that they made was, I believe that there is no trust, truth or understanding in a relationship. My question is, without that, where is a relationship? How do you even call it a relationship? It doesn't even fall into that category. Right? So I think without trust, truth or relationship, we can say they are our acquaintance, we know them. But if we have a relationship, a friendship or an equation that is worth keeping, you need to have these 3 things. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. Lovely. So I'm going to go into the next question, which I think of all the responses was my favorite question. It's from a very young girl who's 8 months pregnant. You already know in the COVID-19 situation how pregnancy can be extremely stressful. But she says, my parents provided for me. They sent me to a good school. They gave me the best opportunities, but they never met my emotional needs. Because my parents believed that if I physically take care of my child, I've provided. So now I'm so toxic already for the baby that's not born, because I want to make sure that she has everything that I did not have. I'm scared to take a job because I may not be there for her. Because my parents believe that by going to work, they can take care of me. I feel I might already disadvantage my child because I'm toxic. And I think you will make a wonderful mother. You know, the very fact that you have beautifully become aware of where you could be toxic is your most vulnerable strength. I know that's an oxymoron, but the very fact that you've acknowledged that this is where you could go wrong is where you can make that difference. So now that you have the awareness, accept that you will never be a perfect mom. Just like none of us are perfect. We have to give ourselves the license to make mistakes and to be able to learn from those mistakes. Because parenting as it is never a perfect process. And the third and the most important thing is to help yourself understand that just because your parents did not provide certain needs for you, it doesn't stop you from providing those needs for yourself.
Oh,
Right?
that is
So
beautiful. Oh, I love this.
it's true, Anu. I mean, if you look at it, both of us at some point have discussed about mothers who've been very, very strong. You know, my mother was a very independent professional. Many times I felt she was not emotionally available for me. But I think the way in which she met my emotional needs, no one else could have. And when I looked at it from the lens of she didn't meet my needs, I felt broken. But when I looked at it from the lens of this is why she made me strong, I think it changed perspective. So thank you for your question, because you've opened the doors for a very important aspect of healing, which is if someone else could not meet a need for me, it's an opportunity for me to acknowledge it and to understand I can meet my own needs. And it will be the most beautiful journey you will make into yourself. Thank you for the question.
No, and I am now feeling very, very happy about it, because now I've got a learning, right? I've said, because I do think that there are some things that were missing in my life, but I've never asked myself, okay, it was missing. What is stopping you from providing it for yourself? You know, so thanks for that insight, Aarti. I like that. I like
Yeah,
that.
love it. Love it. Yeah. So I think the next
Okay.
question is yours.
Yeah, okay. So this is someone has written asking, you know, what do you do? Someone talks bad about me, and that also not in front of me, but behind my back. And once I know that they've done this, I'm not able to relate to them. I'm not able to mingle with them as usual. How can I overcome this problem? So I see, the point is, when you know that someone has spoken badly about you behind your back, the first thing is I look at that person first. Is that a person who's important to me? If that person is important, then I have to have a conversation with that person, saying that, you know, I was hurt. I heard that this is what you said. You achieve two things, I believe. First of all, you verify whether it's true, because somebody might have just come and said some lie to you, and as a result, you've assumed that they have said something and that is the truth, right? So, but get it from the horse's mouth. If that person is important, first of all, check, you know, I heard that you said this. And the second thing that I would do is I tell them that, you know, I really feel bad, you know, that you said that. And, you know, I'm hurt. And you see their reaction. Because if their reaction is going to be, well, you know, I don't care how you feel, then I would question whether that person is important. Do I really need to mingle with somebody who's not caring about my happiness? And actually, Aarti, the reason I talk about it with such confidence is something that I've dealt with. You know, I have actually questioned it. I've questioned it and said, okay, they're not changing, and are they so important that I'm willing to put up with this insensitivity? And the answer is what makes me decide whether I want to continue that relationship or just step back a little bit. I'm not saying, oh, I will never look at you again, I hate you. It's not that. It's just realigning the closeness of the equation. What do you think, Aarti?
I think that's where the healthy boundaries need to come in. When I know that somebody is repeatedly doing something, I mean, would you tolerate it if that person was poisoning your food? Okay, this is poisoning the mind, right? It's equivalent for me. So when I know that somebody is deliberately doing it, see, talking behind someone's back is never unknowingly. It's deliberate. So I would definitely set healthy boundaries, and I would also stop sharing a lot of things with that person, because if that person is going to be talking behind my back, they don't deserve to hear my story. They don't deserve to hear anything from me that is of value. And that's where I would set that boundary and move on. And I think I've experienced it several times because, you know, I live in a small place. And the smaller the place you live in, the more competitive people get. because in a larger city it's not so much. So I've seen so much of jealousy, so much of backbiting, even professionally, that happens here. If they want to destroy you, the first thing they do is to talk about your character, because they can't find flaws in your skill. And I've learned that just setting good boundaries there protects your peace of mind, and it helps you achieve much more. And I think if it can work in work, it will work in relationships as well. And I hope I've added to that. The next question, and I'm going to go into this. It's about it's from a mother who is in an abusive marriage, and she wants to know if it's better for the child to stay with her. That is, should she separate from her husband because the father is abusive? Now, see, I'm not going to give you an advice that will make your decision for your life easier. That's not my job. Okay? I know in astrology that happens. They look at your charts and say this marriage is not going to work and things like that. I understand we have different belief systems, right? From my belief system, I'll just give you one very simple thing. If both people work on a relationship, the relationship will work. If only one person is working, it's not going to work. Relationships require both people to put in effort. If you're already in an abusive relationship and you're looking for somebody to endorse your decision for moving on, please understand the only person's decision that matters is yours. And if you feel you've looked at all the options, you've looked at your financial stability, you've looked at your safety, your child's safety, and all of this, and you're able to move on, it would definitely protect your child from something very difficult and what we call an adverse childhood experience. However, if you're not yet financially capable or emotionally capable of supporting yourself, and you don't have an extended family that can support you, just start making those changes that can lead you towards what you would like to achieve. However, the decision is something that only you can make. And please don't keep calling friends, calling professionals, calling people like me and asking us to endorse what will be good for you, because it is your life. I am not living it. As much as I would like to support you and rescue you, I would like you to understand that I cannot decide for you. Okay? Because you need to make a decision for your life, considering your current reality, your resources, your skills, the well-being of all the people concerned, and what you will be able to do in the long run. Don't make a decision based on short-term emotions. Please look at long-term practicality in all this.
Yeah.
I hope I've answered your question.
And I have used that approach when I have had to make decisions in life. And the way I say it is, it's my decision, right? And the consequences have to be faced by me. So let me assess it and let me make the decision, right or wrong. Let me make it. I'll take inputs from other people, but I will not allow the decision to be made by somebody else, because they are not going to face the consequences.
And that's important as well. Anu, I think the next question we'll have to take together, it's about the parent who's asking about the girl. What messages do we give girls? And so would you like to start off? Add a little bit in the end.
Yeah. So this is a question where the lady has said that, every Indian mother is saying that it's a girl who has to adjust. Always she only has to make all the adjustments, compromise and everything. And I know that, compromise is not necessarily a bad word, but then why it should be only then, and women shouldn't get too aggressive. And but how do we give importance to feelings and all that? These are all standard feelings that all of us go through. Right? And I'll tell you how I dealt with it. But I was very, very fortunate, because my upbringing was really special. In the way Appa and Amma brought me up, not once did they tell me, you're a girl, so behave this way. You're a girl, so you can't do this. You're a girl, so you must speak like this. This was never spoken in our house. They always said, respect your elders, be considerate of other people, do what is right, be sensible. It was all actually gender agnostic in our family. And that actually helped me a lot, because even when I did have gender-based, problems. Like, I have had problems with other women and being unable to get along with other women. But I ended up looking at it more as a practical solution and looking for a practical solution rather than, oh, I am a female and therefore, what is the solution? What do you say, Aarti?
From my side also, I've seen both my parents treat us well, because I'm born with a twin brother. So they actually treated both of us equally on many things. But where I'd like to add to what you've mentioned, I'm sure many of you have not had the kind of good fortune in having parents who could see us as equals. I'm sure many of you have been told you have to adjust, don't come back, we've already sent you, you have 2 younger sisters, so if you come back from your marriage, I cannot take care of you, your father is retiring next year, so we can't financially support you. I understand there are a lot of these challenges, and I know when you come to me for therapy, many of you have not even been able to pay because you're not financially stable enough to take care of yourself. And I know I've supported you through it, because I know that as women we need to stand up for each other and support you. Having said this, it's time for us to break that mold. It's time for us to realize that there will be people who will stand up for us. It may not be in the people that we were born with and call family. It could be in so many other women who share our story and we can call as family. And I think we need to start acknowledging it. And I see that power rising more and more, especially with social media coming in. One of the most beautiful things that's happened, women have united on many things. And I'm not excluding any man from this. I'm just talking about, because the question was specifically steered towards daughters, whoever is experiencing this kind of a discrimination and has had to lose yourself to be able to keep the relationship together, I think we will be able to support each other. Expecting one person to support us is different, but understanding that we're not alone is a completely different ball game here. So please don't give your children messages like you have to adjust. If you can do something as a parent, let your child know, no matter what, I will be there for you. We'll figure this out together. We may not have it all figured out, but we'll figure it out together. Because sometimes we become very cautious, thinking what will the world say, what will happen. No matter what you do, the world that wants to find fault with you will find fault with you, and the world that wants to support you will always support you. You decide which world you want to live in, right? So, because I know people have always found fault with some of the decisions I make, because I have very strong boundaries around my work and my ethics and things like that. They make fun of me because I don't know how to, make money according to them and all that. But I tell you, abundance is not in money. Sometimes abundance is in love. And I have chosen to be in that world, right? So you choose the world. And believe me, that world has people. That world has people who are similar to you. You just need to open your eyes and look, and you will find them. Open your heart and look, you will definitely find them.
No, because it is such a beautiful message of hope also that we give, right? Because there are so many women who feel isolated. And when you look at what I said, hey, I don't know, because I was brought up like that. It is only half an answer. Because when you say what you did, when you said what you did, it reminded me that, yes, I've actually stood up for other women who have not been brought up like that. And it made me feel happy. And at the same time, remind myself the next time I say that, I must also add this aspect to it, right? That if you women are strong, then you stand up for the other women who are still finding their strength.
I think it's Maya Angelou that says that every woman who stands up for every woman in the past and every woman in the future. And that's true, because we are a collective voice and we are never alone. And I hope you find your world, a supportive world, very soon. And you probably will find it closer home than really far away. And you probably may not even reach out on social media. You will find them closer home. It could be a childhood friend, it could be a neighbor. And I hope you find them soon. The next question is a very sweet one of a couple that's moved out of India. They're newly married, moved out of India. And the first 2 weeks or so, a couple of months, they were quite okay. They were overreaching in the courtship phase. Now they've reached a point where they're no longer able to keep up with each other's demands. And so just to sort of shorten the whole question, because it's quite a big question, I'm going to call it courtship fatigue. Okay, there's no technical word, but I'm going to call it courtship fatigue. You become tired of putting your best foot forward. What do you do in a situation like that? Let me help you understand that it's probably an arranged marriage. So which means you were probably getting to know each other only over phone calls and very brief meetings and everything. So naturally, you were not able to move the relationship to a next phase. And after putting your best foot forward so many times, I think both of you would have lost yourself in the process, because you've now forgotten who was I genuinely when I started this relationship. Because I had like this wedding pre-wedding photo shoot and all that, where we showed the world we were very intimate, and then when we actually got into real life, we didn't even know what our favorite breakfast was and everything. And this is one of the paradoxes of our time, where when you look at some of these wedding photo shoots, you're like, wow, what a cute couple. And in real life, they don't even talk to each other. One is binging on Netflix, and the other one is sitting and doing something completely different. They don't even see eye to eye on basic things, don't have common interests. One of them wants to do something, the other wants to do something else. And this is where, just like any relationship, and I'm sorry we laughed so much, but it's not coming from a place to hurt you or from lack of empathy, but I just want you to know that a relationship was never meant to be easy. That's why I think even in the movies, after people meet and they get married, the movie ends, because they don't show you the conflict phase after that. So the conflict phase is what you probably already pushed your relationship into, and probably this is when you will start communicating with each other on an equal platform and let each other know what you like and dislike, what aspects of the relationship are okay and what aspects are not. Because once you're transparent in that communication, you can also let the other one know what makes you happy. So work on both sides, because you're getting to know this person for the first time. It's always good to let them know exactly what you like, because you can't expect the other person to mind read. Okay, I'll sit here and he will guess what I want. That's not going to happen. Believe me, that's never going to happen. So let the other person not become a mind reader and expect things. If you like something, give immediate feedback. If you dislike something, gently put it back. Because instead of fighting that through, give gentle feedback saying, this thing that you did was not particularly great for me. And then slowly rework on these points. And believe me, it really works. Relationships always work when there is mutual respect and when you're able to communicate these needs. And I hope you find yourselves again.
Also, I
think you want to add, Anu?
Yeah, I'd like to add to this, because one of the reasons that I was laughing is because, again, I was laughing at my patterns, right? Because, oh, this is beautiful. Oh, this is lovely. And then you give this image of being deliriously happy. And even at the times when people outside thought I was deliriously happy in a relationship, that I finally found this person who I was wanting to spend time with, or this is my best friend, whatever it is, there were cracks and they were widening, and I was laughing because it is like almost like there is another parallel cinema running. There is a parallel universe which the other people are seeing, and I'm seeing a different universe. The only time that it's only when I realized that this has to coincide. You can't have two parallel streams running. It has to coincide. Just keep it real, whatever it is, keep it real. And that's the only way your relationships, be it an intimate one or just a general friendship, is going to survive. So yeah, I want to put that disclaimer. I wasn't laughing at you guys. I was laughing at all the stuff that I have done.
So we'll go to the next question. And that question again is to me. It says, my mother-in-law is the scorekeeper. We mentioned in our patterns the scorekeeper. So as a result, not only is she affecting the relationship with me, she's also poisoning her son against me using the scorecard. So is there something that I should do in this case? Now, in India, there is a saying that you don't marry just a person, you marry the whole family. And it's sometimes a big blessing, sometimes quite a curse. And, it's slightly tricky. So I'm not going to put any of those structures down. But to understand, when we are inside a structure, we'll have to figure out the best way to work within that structure. So one, I would request you to please focus right now on building your relationship with your husband. Okay, you probably already decided that he's poisoned by his mom, so he's not going to listen to you and all of those things. Set aside any limitations in your thoughts or beliefs that you have. Sit down, and I would suggest two things that work very well in this. One is what I call a connection ritual. Sit with your husband, let him know that every day, let's spend this amount of time together. Fix a time, because you need to make a commitment when it comes to this. It could just be going out for a morning walk, having a cup of coffee together. It can be anything that both of you can make time for, and it's not how much time, but how qualitative that time is. In that, let him get to know who you are. Because if you were living in a large joint family, sometimes what could have happened is that once you got married into the family, you were trying to please everybody. You were having separate courtships with 15 people, right? And it's I'm sorry, it sounds a little difficult, but I know it must have been so painful for you, because not only are you into a marriage which needs so much work, you're also building relationships with so many new people, and you need to get into all their good books. It must have been so difficult for you, and I understand your pain. But where I would like you to understand, you got into this relationship, this house, because of this husband. And so keep that as your primary relationship. Your first relationship is with yourself. Your primary relationship is with your husband. Build that. So you have that daily connection ritual where you get to know each other without complaining about his mother, without doing any of those things. And the second is to do a weekly connection ritual where both of you can go out for dinner, go to the beach, go wherever, whatever. Do something together, which is only the two of you. Many times when we're in a large family and all that, if it's an outing, everybody goes out. Like if it's dinner, 15 people are going out. So again, you don't really get that time to make this your primary relationship. So slowly build this. And once you are able to build this, no matter who's keeping score, your relationship would have been worked on. Here, it's not about the mother-in-law or your husband. It's about the fact that you've not yet bonded and gone through courtship, conflict and companionship with that core relationship. So if I could suggest that you build upon that, it would be something that will work well for you. And I hope it works very well and works very soon. Thank you for your question.
Actually, yes, Aarti, this answer that you gave segues into another question, another two questions which are roughly the same. There is one in which there is a lady who says that, my husband's a nice guy, but he doesn't spend time with me. And I am having to aggressively, point out, 15 years we've been married, and aggressively point out, so that I need time, spend some time with me and all of that. First of all, I'm a little uncomfortable with the word aggressively pointing out, because I don't think aggressively pointing out ever brought good results. But I would like to say that if there is something that you want, asking it from a place of love and understanding almost invariably gets what you want. So I would say that your answer of having those rituals that connect each other would also answer this lady's question about how do I make my husband understand that he has to help in, spending some time with me and also help me with some stuff. What do you think? That it would, wouldn't it?
I think she's also paved way to our secret next session, right? So I'm not going to say anything more.
Yes. No, but why are we not saying it? We might as well say it, no?
Yeah, the next segment that we're recording is called The Many Faces of Love, and we'll talk about it, but I'll probably answer your question a lot more in detail in that segment. I think that would be a better way to answer this question. Right?
Oh, by the way, clarification. She's going to answer it in that segment, not question answer session for that. So in the session that we're going to record.
In the session we're recording. Yeah. So you had, do we take that question where a sister's bond, she talks about the adolescent sister? I think we decided that we'd answer it together.
The sister for life bond, that one, right?
Yes.
When she entered teenage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the background is, this is an older sister. She's got a younger sister. And ever since the younger one became a teenager, the dynamics between the two sisters have changed, she says. And so she says that, because the older one has a bit more experience, she's keen to warn her younger sister and help share her learning so that the younger one doesn't get hurt. But there is always conflict. And so the elder sister has written that she actually, after seeing our episode, about toxic relationships, identified the pattern that she was doing, she was following. And so she said, okay, maybe I am the parent, that rescuer, that I'm the general manager of the universe pattern. So she says that she went and spoke to her sister. Now, this is what she says after that. My sister said, you suffocate me and you're always overbearing, and I felt shattered. So this is what she says. Before Aarti takes on the actual, the crux of the matter, I'd like to say just one thing. You just started a conversation. And she confirmed that what you thought was right. Okay, you said you are the paranoid rescuer types, constantly jumping in to rescue somebody. She said, yes, you are suffocating me. That's the beginning of the conversation. No, why did you stop there? Continue the conversation. See what changes you need to make. And of course, what changes, how to do, we have our psychologist friend. She will answer that better.
So let's take it in a very technical way. Now, whenever you download an app onto your phone or your laptop, it keeps giving you updates, right? And every time you update it, it becomes better. It has better versions and things like that. Similarly, in relationships, people change as a result of the experiences they have. And this is a young child that's become an adolescent. She's going to become a little more secretive. She's going to make friends. She's going to want to move away from family towards the peer group and all of these things. And like Anu said, you've already initiated the conversation. Please understand, you can no longer be her key person. She will now definitely choose somebody from her peer group to be her key person, and this will be a phase. And then she may come back to the sisterhood bond that you share, and all of those things. Life will always give you versions and updates. It's important for you to realize that you have to update yourself depending on the version that's available. Because if you do not update and expect it to be one old thing, we'll be having some machine that's of no use to anybody. Like, if I had that old dialing phone right now, if I had to, call you like that, we wouldn't be able to do a Zoom call right now. I mean, even now, if you actually look at me, after my parents have passed away, my relationship and my equation with my siblings has changed. I wish we had more time together and bond and everything. But I also understand now, each of us is finding our identity without our parents, right? And expecting it to be what it was when my parents were there is my mistake here. And so when I've given my siblings space, the kind of bonding we have is hilarious because we meet from a very, very comfortable space. We've found ourselves without our parents, we've grieved their loss, and we've still been able to blend in a lot of love and laughter into our relationships. And that's really what I think I would answer for this question. And I hope that covers the whole thing.
I think, Aarti, we have time now to take maybe 2 more questions. So do you want to answer the last 2 questions?
Yeah, so the one question that I have here is that your husband is physically abusive. He's hit you in front of your parents. It happens on several occasions. Every time he's angry, he's hitting you, things like this. Please understand, this is domestic violence. And it's important for you to seek professional help as early as you can. For 2 reasons. One, when we've been through chronic abuse, we don't have sufficient courage to walk out of the relationship, and we may need a little bit of hand-holding. Because it's very easy for people, third person, to say walk out of the relationship. Without having the right kind of healing, you may not be able to walk out. But why I'm also asking you to immediately seek help is because this abuse should not continue, and you need to protect yourself. So there are also legal processes involved which you can access. Just like you accessed us online, please go online and look for helplines in your city, because you've not mentioned where you're from, helplines in your city, or you can look into the police department's support for women in danger, women who are victims of violence. Please immediately seek help. And if your parents are willing to take you back home, it may be good for you to work there. And then you can also look at, if he wants to change, you can do a couple of therapeutic interventions. But this is something that requires professional help. So we're not going to, try and answer it for you in a different way. Please look for professional help at the earliest. This is one thing that I would like to mention to anybody who's in an abusive, whether physically abusive relationship, sexually abusive relationship, or emotionally abusive relationship. So please do that immediately. And the last question was one of the sweetest questions. She says, the husband brings out phases of toxicity in her, meaning that they have a good relationship, but there are periods in the relationship that are toxic. So is it a problem with me? Is it a problem with him? Should we change? What should we do? It's very beautiful that you brought this question up, because it brings up the reality, or the beauty of a relationship. Like I said, we are good people, but sometimes we become toxic for each other. So where I would like you to understand this whole thing, whenever you realize that there is a toxic pattern that's coming up, you'll need to understand there's an unhealed part of you that is being triggered by something. And so become aware of the trigger, become aware of the unhealed part, and sit with yourself, because the wisdom for healing that part can come only from you. If I were to give you an example, when I was much younger, one of the things that used to make me very insecure was competition. I never liked people who competed with me. So I would go out of my way to destroy the person. So I would, up my skills, do all these things so that person can never rise. Now, once I've healed that part, when I realized it was coming from a part of me that felt inadequate, it was not from a part of me that was comfortable and adequate, it came from a very inadequate part of me. And when I started working with myself, loving myself more, understanding that I can be there for my unhealed part, it was easier for me to understand that I don't need to compete with anyone. I can in fact support them to achieve their goals as well. So what has changed is, now I mentor a lot more people instead of competing with them. And that has become such an enriching journey for both of us, because not only is it acquainting me with ways to support people and love them through the process, it's also helping others to understand that they can reach out by supporting another person. So it's sort of generating a chain of a lot of love, support, and affection. And I think if we can move there, when we work from a healed part of ourselves, we actually generate waves of kindness and compassion. And that is the essence of being human. I hope this resonates with you as well.
Yeah. No, it's very beautifully. I love the fact that even if I can sense this toxicity that comes in, I love it that it is a phase. She has acknowledged that it's a phase. The first thing that, and I think that's such a nice way of mentioning that. And the second thing that you said, okay, that toxicity is coming. What is a trigger? That means something is unhealed. And this is a great takeaway for me as well, because yesterday something happened, and I want to work on that. So yes, apart from that person saying thank you, I'm going to say thank you to you too.
I'm glad it's working, and we're in this journey together. Like, all of us, how many ever people are tuning in, I think we're here to support each other and move forward. And I hope our question and answer segment resonated with you, and you were able to find some directions for change. And as always, grateful to Anu because of who she is and for our journey together.
I'm really glad that we were able to answer the questions that came in on the Excel sheet, because I must confess that it has helped me as well, and it has sparked off a lot of insights. And I think your questions are going to help me in this firm belief that we have to keep it real. So it's going to help us, both Aarti and me, to continue this journey the way we wanted it to go. So that's it. That's our question answer session. And we'll come back on what day are we doing our next episode? Wednesday. Tuesday.
Next episode is Tuesday. Yeah.
Tuesday. Okay, so Tuesday. Despite the Excel sheets, we get into trouble like this. So we'll come up with the next episode on Tuesday. So look out for all the information regarding what the episode is about. It's going to be about the many faces of love, and we're really looking forward to bringing you more content. So we'll both say bye now. Bye.
Bye.